We may not have to wait too long for the next Final Fantasy VII Remake installment. Welcome back, my friends, to another video here on the channel. Today, some really exciting news coming from Mr. Nomura himself. If you guys don't know who Nomura is, he's basically the mastermind behind Kingdom Hearts and a lot of the Final Fantasy games, especially Final Fantasy VII, and of course the 7 Remake. Now, there was an interview with him where he was talking about the fact that a lot of people think that there's going to be a trilogy they're going to be producing, but they don't really know how many games there's going to be. They have kind of an idea of how many games, but they're not really revealing how many they have in mind. Now, this again was from an interview with Ultimania, which is a guide and lore book that is now available in Japan. It was translated by IGN Japan, and it's some pretty exciting stuff. So he says we have a rough idea on that regarding how many parts there's going to be for the remake, but it's not been completely decided yet. It's impossible to talk about this right now. It seems that many people think it will become a trilogy. Now, here's the thing, my friends. If it was a trilogy, it would take a whole lot longer for Part 2 and Part 3 to come out, because Midgar is what Part 1 is, right? The Part 1 just covers Midgar, which is about, what, 10-15% of the original game. It's honestly a very small fraction of the original game. In the grand scheme of things. I mean, there's so much more, especially the map. There's so much more to the map, so many different locations, so much more story. And if they took 5 hours of, like, Midgard in the original is about 5 hours, right? If they took about 5 hours and added so much juicy content, in my opinion, to stretch it into like 30-35 hours of gameplay for the first part of the remake, then imagine how big Part 2 and Part 3 would have to be if it was a trilogy. So he goes on to say that it's seemingly not going to be a trilogy, and there's going to be multiple parts to the game. So he says it depends on how many parts we make. If we separate it into bigger chunks, it will take more time. But if we take smaller portions, it can be done on a shorter span. Personally, I would like to deliver it fast, end quote. So he wants to deliver it fast. He's talking about getting smaller chunks out there more quickly. Again, they don't have a definitive decision on how many parts there's going to be, but he would like to take smaller chunks rather than 3 games or like a trilogy, so he can get chunks out to the fans more quickly. They have a lot of the base assets already built. Obviously, the engine, the combat system, a lot of stuff's already built, which is going to make, in my opinion, Part 2, Part 3, and however many other parts, excuse me, a lot quicker to produce. So I would honestly wouldn't be surprised if it would only take like a year or two to see the next part. I'm hoping maybe we'll get a part per year. I don't know if that's, asking too much. I don't know if that'd be too much crunch. It might be. So maybe every 2 years. I don't know. But I hope it's sooner than later. And to hear him say that, he would rather, take smaller chunks at a time and be able to deliver them faster, that's reassuring. That gets me super excited, because again, if you're thinking of it from a development and a business perspective on top of that, right? You want to keep fans into it. I mean, no matter if they took like another 5 years, fans are still going to be excited. But if you take the more casual fans that are, maybe they're really excited about this game right now, maybe they kind of start to lose interest the more time that goes on. Maybe they'll come back for Part 2 either way. But obviously, the quicker you can get the next part out, I would assume the better, since it is kind of like a connected story. You don't want to wait too long. You don't want to wait like another 5 years. That said, like I said, I don't think it's going to take that long. I think it's only going to take a couple years, especially the fact that you want to do it in smaller chunks, smaller portions. That excites me. Some people are kind of saying, I've read some comments online that people feel like that's kind of like a cash grab, people are calling it. But I would have to strongly disagree. And the reason for that is because this is obviously nowhere close to what it was in the original game. This is not a 1-for-1 remake, right? It's a remake. It's not a remaster. It's not 1-for-1 at all. I mean, like I said, Midgar in the original is about like 4 to 5 hours. I just recently actually started playing it for the first time. Midgar took me about 4.5 hours to get through. And obviously that was because, I was sort of familiar from, of Midgar after playing the remake. I had some familiarity there, so I kind of had an idea of what to do. Although, there are some things that are very different. As someone who has now played both and just recently played both, maybe I have a different opinion from most people from back in the day. who played, Final Fantasy VII in like 1997 when it came out. But as someone who just recently played both for the first time, and well, I'm at least the Midgar section, I'm still working my way through Final Fantasy VII Original. I feel like, it's a lot easier to compare the two. And Midgar felt very rushed in the original to me. I don't know if it's because I played it after the remake. A lot of people who are comparing the two most likely played Final Fantasy VII Original back in the day. Whereas, people like me, other people maybe who had just played both them, maybe it's a different perspective. Playing the original after playing the remake, I feel like from a storytelling perspective, when you compare the two, Midgar definitely does feel rushed in the original, in my opinion. And I feel like in the remake, all the added stuff, some people may say is just like filler, but it's definitely not how I felt. I felt like it was, it added to the story. Everything they've added in Final Fantasy VII Remake felt like it just added to the experience. It added to your ability to connect to all these characters, your ability to just, I don't know, it's just be more engaged with this section of the story. And if they continue the whole remake the way they did part 1, then it's going to be amazing. It's going to allow fans, both new and old, to engage with the story in such a deeper level, in my opinion, right? Especially those fans who played it back in the day, or maybe you're just playing for the first time now, like I am. Either way, if you've experienced the original Final Fantasy VII, the fact that they're adding all this extra story allows you to connect on a deeper level. For example, if I take like Biggs and Jesse and Wedge, for example, right? I barely got to know them in the original. In my playthrough through Midgar, I barely got to know them. They're obviously, spoiler alert, they're not there. I'm not going to say why, but they're not there when you leave Midgar. But you didn't really get to connect with them as much in the original. Whereas in the remake, I felt like I really got to connect with them because there was a lot more dialogue with them. There's a lot more experiences with them. For example, when you go on that mission, what is it, Chapter 4 in the remake, with Jesse, Wedge, and Biggs, you get to connect with those characters on a deeper level. You get to go to see a little bit of Jesse's background and her history. So that just adds so much more to the experience. And so, for me, I think taking smaller chunks, like they did with the Midgar section, even if it takes up to 10 parts, if we're getting like a new game every year, every 2 years, or a new part, the end result may be like 10 parts that if you play them from front to end might take you like 400 or 500 hours, but you're getting so much more of an experience, so much more depth, so much more, character interaction and connection to these characters and in this world, which I think, by the way, I'm going to make a video a little bit later on about this, but Final Fantasy VII, the original, I still feel like they did an amazing job for that time. 1997, they did an incredible job with the storytelling and connecting you to the world and the characters, which is why people love the game so much. But I feel like what they're doing now is they're just giving it so much more life and just like exploring things that, maybe, we didn't really think of exploring in the first game, but like we couldn't, obviously, because it wasn't there. And just, I don't know, just so much more opportunity and possibility for the story of Final Fantasy VII. And I don't know, I'm all for it. Give me as much as I can. Give me, 600, 1,000 hours worth of Final Fantasy VII Remake in the end. I'll take it. But anyways, that's the news video. I kind of ranted a little bit there. I thought it was going to be like a quick 3-minute video, and I kind of went off on a rant. I apologize, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Are you excited about this news? Do you prefer, like a trilogy that are super long, or do you prefer like these smaller chunks? Personally, I prefer smaller chunks. I think it's better. It gives them the opportunity to give us, more, games faster, and obviously if each chunk is going to be about 30 to 40 hours gameplay anyways, then that's going to be pretty significant. Like I said, Midgar is such a small fraction of the original game. If they were to make a trilogy, it just wouldn't make sense. The first part of the game would have had to have included a little bit more than it did if they were going to make a trilogy. Part 2 and Part 3 would have ended up being like 100 hours each if they were going to make this a trilogy. So I don't mind how many parts they take. Getting it out to the fans quicker I'm all for that. I'm excited. I can't wait. I want to see, especially someone who's playing through Final Fantasy VII, the original, for the first time now, and experiencing this world and this story outside of just Midgar, which is only in the remake. You know, I want to see how are they going to remake all these different things? How are they going to remake all these, you know, other characters and all these environments, right? Like the gold saucer. I cannot wait to see what the gold saucer looks like in the remake. It's going to be mind-boggling. It's going to be crazy. Cannot wait. Anyways, that's my rant for the day. I apologize. This video took longer than I meant to. I'm really excited, but let me know what you guys think. I'll see you guys very soon in another video. Thanks so much for watching. Until the next one, game on.